Hi guys, this is an organizational consulting plan presentation. I'm Nancy Zayas, and this is for forensic consulting. What I'll talk about today is I'll describe the issues involved with the situation and define what needs to be accomplished, as well as outline a process of investigation, mediation, and review for this type of scenario. I will identify key decision makers and different stakeholders and how they should be engaged, as well as discuss, cultural and dynamic factors and considerations related to this particular situation of vandalism. And then I'll share my recommendations to address this situation, and I'll include evidence-based assessment of the outcome that's being recommended. And then I will create a system for monitoring and follow-up. So here's the situation. A new building under construction of a technology company was vandalized over the weekend. Racial slurs were spray painted across building materials and fencing. The company has asked for consultation on how to respond to this hate-based incident, both internally and publicly. The goal here is to support organizational recovery, ensure cultural safety, protect employee morale, because that one's very important, and build long-term prevention strategies. So, what are the issues involved? We have moral inquiry and emotional distress to the employees and stakeholders, especially those from the targeted communities who may be sensitive to those kinds of words or the language being used. Potential legal and reputational risks if the response is inadequate, the construction delay because it can take a lot of time and extra money for this construction to continue, the need for a clear organizational stance on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then ensuring that the workplace culture reflects psychological and zero tolerance for hate. So let's talk about how to handle all of that. What needs to be accomplished here? I thought that we could do a thorough investigation of the incident, have open communication and restorative processes for those who are impacted. Maybe a culturally informed public response even could be helpful. Some internal training and prevention initiatives, and some long-term monitoring and accountability strategies to prevent this from happening in the future. Next is investigation, mediation, and review. Will collaborate with local law enforcement and security experts, conduct internal anonymous tip lines or interviews with nearby staff or contractors, anybody who may know something or have an opinion, review any camera footage or contractor logs that we may have in place. Mediation is also very important. Offer some employee support groups or listening sessions. As a therapist, I know how important it could be to have some support groups going on. We can engage in a third-party conflict resolution facilitator, to come in and train on racial trauma and how that impacts our staff. Then we can review, assess organizational response effectiveness, and recommend policy and updates or new cultural training as needed. Some of the people who really matter here are the key stakeholders and decision makers involved in this build. We have leadership who can make public statements or, approve this response protocol that we have going on. The DEI and HR departments can oversee internal cultural healing and education processes. Legal counsel can ensure that responses meet compliance and also have liability protection at the same time. The employees can, come and speak if they feel targeted, they can feel heard. The community members, if the organizational serves local populations, can come in and speak and support as well to prevent things like this from happening in this community. And even the construction team, because they can maintain engagement and safety assurances as a whole. As a therapist, I know that there are almost always some cultural and dynamic factors at play, historical and cultural trauma. So the use of racial slurs can activate long-standing wounds for other people who may already have those types of wounds. Intersectionality, multiple identities like race, gender, or immigration status, specifically right now, may impact how people can experience this incident. And I always use the example with clients that, the ceiling can cave in right now, and all of us are going to react very different to that. I may never be able to be in another place closed off under a ceiling and feel safe ever again, and somebody else might be able to be okay. So, just understanding that depending on our experiences, this type of incident can affect us all very differently. Power dynamics, employees may feel afraid to speak up or may mistrust institutional responses. That's a big one. A lot of times people struggle to want to speak up. I said that this was in Texas. So this says Texas has complex racial and political dynamics. This cannot be ignored. That's true. Depending on the location, we must take that into consideration. Some of the immediate response would be to clean up the site so that people don't have to see that. We can hold a healing circle or a vigil for employees or release a strong statement of our values as a company or as an organization and what we aim to do. We can have a culture reset where we offer trauma informed training. We can invite cultural leaders or consultants to support this type of recovery. This is something that most clinicians like myself or organizations would be willing to help on something like this for free. Ongoing action would be to implement monthly check ins, offer anonymous feedback channels, or ways to get our anonymous feedbacks out there if we notice anything else in the future, and to partner with local civil rights groups or anti racist organizations to prevent this type of thing from happening again. For monitoring and follow-up, we can develop a community pulse survey to track employee safety and inclusion. We can hold quarterly reviews of initiatives with stakeholder feedback. We can create a dashboard for transparency around racial equity efforts. We can review construction contracts and vendor partnerships for alignment with company values. I think that one's really big just because that's not something that a lot of companies maybe do or have the time to do. But after something like this has taken place, then it makes sense to do a little more research or set that as a role for one person in the company to really look into those kinds of things. And finally, we can include hate-based incident response in future risk assessments and emergencies. As a mental health provider with cultural sensitivity, I recognize that addressing hate incidents isn't just about fixing the moment, but it's about building inclusive organizational culture. Like for the long haul, this moment offers a critical chance for reflection, accountability, and healing for the future. Thanks so much.